Welcome to the Skiffy Fanny Shows at the Movies.
Whoever wrote this episode should die.
Well, you did write the script, Daniel.
Yes, I'm calling for my own death.
I'm Shaun.
We're at that point. I'm Daniel.
And on today's show, where do we say that Marshall's here? Oh, it's at the end of this. I was like, I felt really guilty. Like, why are we just skipping over that Marshall's here?
We're ignoring him.
I'm so sorry.
Read the script
for my cue.
I'm sorry. On today's show, we'll discuss...
I've actually... I used to be an actor. I played Richard III.
I got
five
standing over.
Here it comes.
Can you tell we've seen this movie a few times? Like, we can quote the movie? All right, well, on today's show, we'll discuss 1999's historical document Galaxy Quest, written by David Howard and Robert Gordon, directed by Dean Parisot, and starring Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell, Daryl Mitchell, and many, many more, including a cameo appearance from Rainn Wilson in his original form. Joining us for this special podcast is fantasy author and podcaster Marshall Ryan Maresca. Welcome, Marshall.
Welcome.
I'm just jazzed to be on the show, man.
I wish they could do the whole episode of us just quoting the
movie.
Quotes. Just with quotes. It's
every
theoretically possible.
I'm not that guy.
We'll recreate the whole thing and be blocked in certain countries.
You can do that too? Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into the discussion, a reminder to please share your comments, questions, or suggested topics with us at skiffyandfancy.com, listener suggestions. We could discuss them right here on future shows. If you haven't already, join us live each Friday at 6:30 Central on Shaun's Alphabet Streams Twitch to be a part of our interactive live streaming, or join us anytime for interaction on our Discord. Finally, please join our Patreon and be part of our exclusive content. It only takes $1 a month, and let others know about how fabulous we are.
Or else. Literally all I got.
Or else
all
we unleash the Omega-13.
Reach the Omega-13. So much. All right, so the question now comes, who's going to do a brief summary of Galaxy Quest? And because Daniel is a nerd, the script is in fact full of quotes for this movie. And so I must say, explain. Sorry, let me do the voice. Explain as you would a child. So I don't know who's actually doing it. It's either Daniel or Marshall.
All right, I can take a stab. So Galaxy Quest involves a group of aging actors of a 1980s television show, Galaxy Quest, very akin to Star Trek. The whole entire movie is basically, if you don't know already, a parody of Star Trek and other sci-fi.
I would say more loving homage than
homage,
parody,
yeah.
But,
Correct, yeah. And it deals with them as their show is no longer on. They're attending conventions, bickering amongst themselves due to past show history. They're doing, plugs for the opening of stores. Basically, their success has passed them on, other than really loyal, devoted fan groups that, carry on these conventions. So similar, again, to Trek conventions. And so at one of these, the main actor in the group, who is played by Tim Allen, who played the captain of the ship, is approached by a bunch of what he assumes to be fans, but turns out that they actually are real aliens that take him and then eventually the entire troupe of actors who played the crew, the executive crew of the ship, take them aboard a recreation of the ship to basically try to talk and reach an agreement with a hostile alien race led by an alien named Saris, I believe, if I remember correctly, who wants to like destroy and exterminate basically this other race of aliens. And at first, Tim Allen and the others don't realize that these are actual
Jason
real
Nesbitt.
aliens.
Jason Nesbitt.
I can never remember names.
Use his real actor
Jason.
name.
Yeah, Jason doesn't believe that, or doesn't realize that this is actually real, and so gets them into even bigger trouble. Yeah, take it over, Shaun, because I'm pretty much...
Well, so really from there, it just kind of devolves. At first, he's super excited about the idea that, I could get everybody else involved, and they think he's nuts. And then they go, and they realize the ship's real, and then it gets obviously very real, because it turns out alien overlords, who are also half shrimp monster, they're not nice. Lobster, space lobster, shrimp monster. I mean, really, come on. And yeah, so it just becomes like basically an episode of Galaxy Quest at that point. It's an adventure where there's a problem that needs solving and a bad guy that needs solving, and heroism to ensue. Many specific ones, including a wonderful scene where they ponder exactly why the showrunners would have made an obstacle course of deadly smushy gizmos to get to the reactor. I'm not sure exactly why the reactor's in the bowels of the ship and not where the beryllium sphere is, but you know what? It doesn't matter, as Sigourney Weaver's character tells us.
That episode was badly written.
Yes, it was badly written. Yeah. I guess the reactor is tied to this mysterious Omega-13 device that nobody really knows what it is, because it was written for this episode of Galaxy Quest, like a two-parter that never really made it completely to air and never got finalized what this mysterious Omega-13 device is actually going to be. But the aliens recreated it somehow from having seen transmissions of the TV show. So that's something we didn't mention, I guess, is that these aliens who are not termites, Thermians? I believe.
Thermians.
And so they saw transmissions from Earth of Galaxy Quest and other shows, including Gilligan's Island, and they don't have a concept of fiction. They think that all of these broadcasts are actually like historical records of things that go on Earth. And so they believe that the Galaxy Quest is a real following of this ship and its crew. And so they model their entire kind of ethos around the messages of never give up, never surrender that the show had. And so a large part of the tension in the movie is the fact that the humans, even when they realize that these are actual real aliens, don't really know how to explain to them that the aliens are confused and mistaken, that it's not reality, it's fiction.
Yeah.
And the aliens don't really have a concept of what the difference is between fiction for entertainment's sake versus fiction in the sense of lying for bad intents.
Marshall, you looked like you wanted to say something a moment ago, and so I want to give you that chance.
Well, when he brings up, like, okay, the ship they're on is built by the Thermians, and, like, all of the technology on it, they created. There's something really fascinating. They created it based on, like, we watched the show and replicated it perfectly.
Yeah.
But in a way, they don't understand what they built, which is kind of fascinating to me. Like, how do the controls of the ship work? We don't really know. We just watch what Tommy was doing with his hands. Mm-hmm. How does the transporter thing or the conveyor work? We don't know, but we just watched what Fred was doing with his hands. What does the Omega-13 do? We don't know, but somehow we made it.
Yeah.
and made it so good that this other alien's like, I need to have the Omega-13, which is the entire MacGuffin of the movie, of what Saris wants. Why does he want the Omega-13? Because he knows it's powerful. Why is it powerful? Because they mimicked it off the show. How did they do that? Shh, don't ask questions.
Yeah. And you're not wrong. That's a cool detail, though, because when you think about it, like, if you think historically, they've only fairly recently started acting as humanoids, because they're basically these, like, octopus squid beings, right? And then they use this body thingamajig that lets them look like a normal biped. But then you realize as bipeds, they're using their hands as bipeds, but that's not how they would actually behave because they've got like 8 hands, 8 tentacles, gizmos, right?
Yeah.
And so it's to some degree, it's like, yeah, we built this ship, we spent like all this time modeling our society, but like our species hasn't had 100,000 years or whatever figuring out how to use opposable thumbs. Like it's like they took octopus and put them in a spaceship and said, figure it out. It's like, well, it turns out that takes a hot minute.
They're really good at technology.
They're the ones who build it. Yeah, they're so good at technology that they don't even know what they did, and that's I love it. Yeah. I love it, but they're
kind of like the opposite of the Pakleds from Star Trek: The Next Generation. That race that's kind of like dim and very innocent, seemingly, that go around saying like, we look for things that make us go, like have absolutely no technological know-how. They just take technology from others. These are sort of the opposite. They're very innocent, don't really know what's going on socially or in terms of a culture of a planet, and even this other race of lobster people that are attacking them. But they're really, really good at technology.
Can we stop calling them lobster people? Because they don't really look like lobsters. They're more like a crawdad. You know, like a green mean crawdad had a baby with a snapping turtle. Like that's like what these are.
Yeah.
They're like half reptile, half crustacean, and
they're a repstation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a crawtile, depending on your preference. Yeah. I'm really glad we brought this up. Because that's one of the messages of the movie, right at the end, when they don't think they're strong, they don't think that they know how to sort of manage themselves, and they get these people they don't know as actors to help them, and then at the end, it's like, well, you know, you've always had a leader. It's Balthazar. Like you're capable the whole time. You just didn't like believe in yourself because you thought that you weren't quite worthy of it. And yet they're all remarkably capable. They, as Marshall's rightly pointed out, they built this ship from a TV show's like recordings from space. Right? It's not like they had technical schematics for this. They figured it out. So they're actually remarkably intelligent.
And they effectively fight back as well eventually.
Yes, they fight funny, though. They kind of do this.
Yes.
But, you know, they haven't had a lot of fighting experience, so.
I mean,
but they figured it out.
Whoever did, like, the choreography or just, like, body work with the actors who are playing the Thermians, like, did an impeccable job of, like how to walk like you're pretending to be human when you're really a squid person, and they all nail it. It's just perfect. I love it.
So apparently they based it off of marionettes, like those 1960s sci-fi shows where you had the marionettes going around in space. I forgot what the TV shows were actually called.
But I know what you're talking about, like Thunderbirds or Thunder.
Yeah, kind of like Thunderbirds, but there's another one. But yeah, that's the super marionette. They said act like those super marionettes in terms of your reactions and how you walk and move, etc. And I can see that.
Well, and the vocal, right? Because the way Calatoni does his as Balthazar, right? Like apparently that was something he kind of developed in this film, and it is incredibly funny, but also incredibly alien because he doesn't know how to laugh, and so when they laugh, it's like completely uncomfortable. They talk so funny when they're excited. He does that. You are our best hope. We've got your limousine. You know, like
he is. He's like the secret MVP of this movie. I mean, yes. Like everyone in this movie is great, but like everybody else is great. They're all playing chess, and he's playing 10 games of chess at once. Like he's because he's doing so much, and he's, you know, 9th on the call sheet, but he's the one who's really bringing it on a whole nother level, and it's great.
There's no line of his. there's no line, well, I shouldn't say that. Most lines of his, like, you can't help but laugh. But then he uses that same intonation in some scenes that are really, like, dark and devastating, like being tortured. And it's the same intonations, but he puts this little bit of, like, utter despair and sorrow in there. It's almost like that Simpsons meme where Ralph Wiggum's heart gets crushed by Lisa. Like, you can, if you pause, you see the moment where his heart is crushed. It's like that with the way he's acting it too. Like, you see that devastation and where his heart is just absolutely crushed when he learns that the humans have been lying to them, effectively.
So it's worth.
What?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in doing my rewatch this week to refresh my memory of it, one of the things that jumped out at me was the Thermians are kind of deceptive to them in the beginning. Like, and there's a part where he apologizes for deceiving them and not telling them the whole story. So it's like, you understand deception, clearly, because you apologized for it 20 minutes ago. So what's, it's a little weird that's like the hinge that the whole thing is on when they have them do it themselves.
But at the same time, right, he does that, but his reaction to... It's not like he gets caught. He gives up the game himself. Right. And he mentions later, right, that they just now started to learn about this from Saris. And so maybe to some degree he started the practice, but, like, he's very childlike in a way. So his natural reaction to realizing he's omitted relevant information that maybe they all need to know is, like, he's like a guilty dog. Like, he's just like, I'm so sorry, please don't hurt me. Like, but to be fair, right, because every time he has interacted with someone that's not of his own species, it's a person who's a megalomaniac mass murderer. So he's kind of used to having bad things happen.
Well, they're also kind of getting to that point because of desperation.
Yeah.
And part of that desperation is that they're kind of trying to go it alone because, like you said before, they don't really feel worthy of even being in the presence of Jason Nesmith and of the others, and of Dr. What is his name? Alan Rickman's character?
Lazarus.
Yes. Dr. Lazarus.
By Graftar's hammer, by the sons of Warvan, you shall be avenged.
The movie on both sides is about finding that they're more worthy than they think, I'd say. Both the aliens and the humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Message-wise, this... Like, I don't want to, like, use message too hard here because I don't want someone to be like, Galaxy Quest is message fiction, and that, like, has a fit about it. But it does have multiple
it was woke
messages.
Before woke was a thing.
Oh, good lord. No, it definitely wasn't. But it tried. At least was aware that the main character
it was pretty good for the 90s.
The computer. Yeah, pretty
90s.
Good. But a thing about it is that when you think of all of the different, like, mini subplots that are in this that are resolved, right? There's a message in all of them, right? The Nesmith's character learns that, he maybe needs to respect not only the members of his formal crew, but also that he has sometimes treated fans as just like a means to an end in somewhat really unfair ways, right? That kid, to some degree, is having to learn a lesson about, like, his first lesson is that it's not a real spaceship, and then that gets shot to hell really, really quick. But, like,
Justin
his lesson,
Long's character,
he learns kind of like your normal teenage lesson, which is one is like when your parents tell you to do something, you're supposed to do it because responsibility. But the other is like, yeah, but like to be there with your friends and to all work together is like, that's the ship, right? That's Galaxy Quest. We're all part of the same crew, and friendship perseveres overall. It's even what Balthazar says, right? The other characters have to learn like and their own sense of confidence.
He's outside.
And he's also outside. That's fair. Yeah, I think Tony Shalhoub's character, Tech Sergeant Chen. I think his is learning how to function while high.
But we'll get to that in a second, unless you want to segue into that.
I mean, we could go anywhere. I think there's a lot in this movie for what is a little bit of parody and a little bit of, and it's definitely a comedy. There's just a lot in here.
I mean,
go ahead.
Also, like watching it again, I realized, I mean, I love this movie so much, but the first third of it definitely takes a while to like find its place and does a lot of odd things that you just sort of have to yada yada past to get to, like, once everybody is on the ship, then it's off to the races, and like every line is a banger, and absolutely the rest of the movie just absolutely cooks. But like the first third like had me this time around just really going like, wait a second, like when they're doing the convention, the idea is that they always, all five of them, do every convention together, and like the idea that like one of them is late or whatever is like considered absolutely absurd, and that Alexander always has to wear the headpiece, and I'm like, that's not really what convention culture is. And I started thinking about, like, we're also supposed to accept the idea that they were all on this show in 1982, and it's 1999, and most of them, and that all five of them really haven't worked since, which also is like, and I thought about, I actually is like, is there an example of that where, like, was there a show from the 70s or 80s where nobody worked again other than that job? Like I have a hard time believing that Gwen didn't have, to like Aaron Gray went from Buck Rogers to then Silver Spoons or something. That's like, Gwen didn't have a Silver Spoons. She didn't have some dumb sitcom or something like that. Like, all of them only have Galaxy Quest as their their one thing on their resume, and thus the five of them are stuck sort of just doing everything together but not progressing from there. And that part, thinking about it more, is like, that doesn't quite ring true, because it's not like Shatner didn't have TJ Hooker or anything else like that.
No, you're completely right, because if you think about like any show that lasted at least a few seasons in that era, the 80s, like I was thinking like Knight Rider, right, with David Hasselhoff. He had Baywatch not terribly long after he did Knight Rider, right, which ran for many seasons, and he's done everything from reality TV shows to, he was in the Nick Fury Marvel adaptation in the late 90s, which is hilarious. It's hilarious. It's worth watching. And, he's had a career. You wouldn't say that he has the same star power that he did in the 80s and early 90s, perhaps, but who really does? You kind of settle to some degree, not everybody gets to have that. Yeah, so you're right. It is kind of weird that this is their only money. Like, even Lou Ferrigno, who hasn't had a major television show of his own in like 50 years, is doing convention circuits, but is on lots of stuff. He was on, like that show with the comedian, the like portly comedian guy. He played the neighbor in that.
That narrows it down.
Yeah, King, something with King in the title. I can't remember. What does it matter, right? So you're right, completely right.
It's taking the concept to the extreme, right? This cliche
true,
which is what most of the movie is doing to one degree or another, and playing with those that were in Star Trek or even Next Generation. Like Marina Sirtis, what did she do after Next Gen? I'm sure she was in things. I'm sure she has done things, but never big like the character of Troy to that sort of broad recognition necessarily, right? And so, and even when they all came back for Picard, then in the final season of Picard, it's like you haven't really seen them all doing huge things. Jonathan Frakes hosted that like weird is it real or not kind of show, if I remember correctly, and hosted other shows, and he directed a lot of them went on to direct things. So it's taking this idea, like, yes, they did things, but take that to the absolute extreme of like, these guys are so cursed, like they didn't do shit. They had no other than open stores. Like they've got nothing, and because of that, they need money, and they got to stick together as the crew, right? And sort of like, even though they get annoyed by Jason and his antics and his domineering kind of attitude, they got to go along with it and stick together to be able to get the paycheck.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, and also that's like speaks. I wonder how much the people who made this, like how much convention culture they really like inured themselves in, because it's sort of this sense of like, I mean, some of it feels really accurate, but the other idea of like, here's a show that's so beloved, you can have a 3-day convention that is packed
for 20 years.
Yes.
Because it's
20
like
years
the 20th.
Old.
Yeah.
And yet these people are a joke at the same time. It's a little bit weird. And I mean, obviously, of course, they're a shorthanding thing to like get us, to get the movie started, because hey, it's a movie. But like, there's a bit where Jason goes to the bathroom and just hears 2 random teenagers going, haha, these guys are jokes. And this like turns him on a dime. And you're like, hey, you never heard this before, Jason, ever? And like, is this the first time that you heard someone disparage you? And because he acts like this is the first time it's
this is news to him.
Yeah. Rather than, hey, I haven't gotten a job in 18 years that wasn't related to this. And
to some degree, like, he's delusional, right? Because he has this perception of himself. He is adored by all of these fans. They love him. They hang on his every word. He's got kids that are like that, adults. Like, he becomes the center of attention.
Yeah. His ego makes its own reality.
Yeah.
It does. And even we learn, right, that he is doing these, like, people will pay him some amount of money to, like, come to their garage and, like, pretend to be the captain, basically, or, do, like, little mini episodes for fans, which is obviously a reference to what happens in actual Star Trek. Not necessarily for any of the major actors, but some of the less major actors have done fan films, which is kind of neat. A+ fandom. But it does I get the strong impression that he's that kind of character that has like this bubble around him, and he hasn't had the experience of the bubble being burst. And maybe that's somewhat unrealistic, but for the sake of our story, we can kind of accept it.
For the sake of, hey, it's a movie. Though the interesting thing about it, given that like his egomania is like the thing he needs to get over, that's like his arc. What's fascinating to me is like when he first goes to the ship and thinks it's, wow, this is an impressive set you guys have built and all that, and then realizes, oh no, it's real, and ends up on Earth. His first instinct is to go find the other 4 and be like, hey, we got like he wants to share it with them.
This is awesome.
And, so it's kind of interesting that like that's probably the least egotistical thing for him to do is like, I want to share this with you, with you all, and yet it's still presented in a way as him being egotistical.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of a confusion in the parody there, which is like on some level he is simultaneously like so popular that he's sort of lost focus, but also not popular enough that he wants to make sure to bring his friends with him all the time. And it's like,
he still needs them in a way to be able to prop himself up.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. But it's still kind of nice to just, like, he isn't as much of an asshole as perhaps we're led to think. He's maybe full of himself, but at his core is the man they all used to know, the man that, like, does like them and does want them to be part of with him. And it is nice that kind of gets pulled back. Like, they could have gone mega asshole with this, and then we would have to have this conversation about, like, is he redeemable at this point?
Right.
But he's just like average ass, I suppose. Slightly
endearing.
Full of himself ass.
To an endearing kind of nature.
Yeah.
So I haven't really been to many conventions.
So then you've missed out all of the live bands that have been at every convention in the United States since 1980. Yeah.
Yes, I have. But like
hold
convention...
on. Have you not heard about this, Daniel?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't know if you're aware, but Metallica actually opened for the Star Trek convention in 1992.
Really?
Yeah, in Toronto.
Huh.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. Britney Spears, before she was popular, did go to the Knight Rider reunion convention in 1997, but she wasn't really quite. I think Baby Baby, like Hit Me One More Time had come out, but it wasn't. She hadn't quite hit it big. Huh. And then the guys who did the Macarena have opened 6 different World Cons since that song came out. Yeah,
we won tickets to go to a convention in Houston once.
Which one?
Patrick Stewart was there.
Which convention?
I don't remember how long ago it was.
Okay,
the big Houston Comic Con.
Oh man,
it's a Houston
Comicpalooza is
Comicpalooza. Yeah, that was
What year?
I don't remember.
No, it's just really important. I need to know the year because I could tell you which band opened up for the convention.
Yeah, I don't remember a band opening it up. But so at conventions, though, we can look it up. Is it customary that if a ship crashes into the convention, that everyone will just kind of go with it and like not worry about like the enormous costs or damage to property or potential injury?
Well,
and just be like,
because it definitely wrecks a ton of cars in the parking lot. Yeah. But I mean, actually, I kind of love that, like, once it's there and just happens to stop right on the stage, and the guy who's the MC, who has been vamping. Yeah, who's been vamping for, like, I guess an hour, just because, like, the crew was supposed to be here, and they're not, and I gotta kill time, because I don't know what's going on. And then this thing happens, and then the door opens, and the first of the actors walks out, you're like, I guess this is the entrance. And I just love that whole bit. Like, I wonder how scripted it was and how much it was just Kevin just riffing, because there's the bit where it's like, and tech charge at 10 and a friend and another crew member.
He's just rolling with it. Like, what do you do at that point?
Like, this is what's happening. And then, I mean, I love it when Saris comes out and the people at the front, like, just shoot Nerf guns at him. It's like, what is this guy? We know he's the bad guy because look at him.
Yeah.
But we think this is a bit.
Oh, man. That would be so... You could just see, like, if they made this into a show, like, at some point you have one of their species is actually nice and is friendly, but everybody judges them because they look like a snapping turtle lobster man. You could have fun, but we will never get a TV show of Galaxy Quest, I'm afraid.
I thought they're still planning one.
Yeah, but do you want one now?
I can't. No, not really.
I mean, I think
not with that,
especially now. Yeah, like the fact that it ended up being a one and done thing, and is part of, I think, what keeps it so beloved. And like, you don't need to go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree. It is kind of perfect on its own. It doesn't have to be more, and that is kind of nice that it's sort of preserved. But it would have been, like, there is just so much fun you could have with the premise. It's just unfortunate
absolutely.
that it's just too late. It's too late now. I mean, not least of all because you can't do it without Alan Rickman. Like, in my opinion, Alan Rickman is absolutely necessary for this to work as a sequel or a miniseries, any of that stuff. And he has unfortunately left this mortal coil. So
it was 2013, Shaun.
When was
Comicpalooza 2013?
Yeah, that was Nickelback. Nickelback opened for that one. Yeah. You don't remember them singing?
You just know this?
Yeah, I've got all this memorized. It's on the fan encyclopedia, dude. Like, you can find all of this out. Yeah. Okay, well, now I've totally destroyed this. So.
I'm not going to go listen to Nickelback. I don't think I ever have. But
you don't think that they say that a hero can save us? I'm not going to stand here and wait. Hold on to the wings of an angel. Come on. No?
Apparently
at any moment someone's
get
gonna
to these
break out the song.
conventions.
On some level, I think they do nail just the way a convention can feel, and but it also, it seems like you have a thing where they, it seems to be the convention is a 3-day thing of chaos, that the only attractions are these 5 actors, but they don't have a really set schedule besides, like, even the electronics store seems to be part of the convention.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
because for some reason Brandon and his friends are walking right past it, and
Yeah, that's true.
Well, he was supposed to meet them, right? That they were the gig that he was supposed to go to. And I guess they showed up because A, they're mega fans, and B, because maybe they had some questions.
no, it was
They just go to
just
all their appearances.
Yeah, or it's just they go to all their appearances regardless. But it seems to be like in the same spot as the convention for some reason.
The convention must have been for other things, though, because, like, they literally just came out on the stage, Jason did his thing, and they're like, all right, we're going to do the signing, and that was it.
No, the rest is just
there
guys'
would be other
one-man
things
show.
involved.
I mean, the convention, their appearance at the convention is akin to those scenes in so many movies where, like, a teacher is, like, giving a lecture where they're, like, a minute into the lecture and then the bell rings and then they're
Immediately, yes.
Yeah. It's like, we're shorthanding what all this is, but...
absolutely, yeah, to some degree. Well, like, everything's being a bit parodied here, to a degree. I see in chat Rainbow Warrior is here, welcome, and he mentions that many Star Trek actors like Doohan, Koenig, and Takei opened video stores in the 80s. So there's probably a reference being done there.
Sure.
Go to the tech superstore where the savings are. By Grabthar's hammer. What a saving.
What a saving. So is this the first... Is this the first movie that really did this kind of pastiche, parody / homage? Because so much of it now on my rewatch, it's hard for me to remember back to when I first saw it, which was well after its, several years after it was first released. But I can't remember that experience compared to now rewatching it, where so much of it seems familiar now. It seems like it's not cutting edge to do this kind of parody, but at the time, I seem to recall that maybe it was a little more new to be doing this kind of...
I think so. It feels to me sort of in the same vein as Mystery Men, which also came out in 1999.
Yes.
That like, here we are parodying a thing that most audiences don't really understand what the thing is we're parodying. And so therefore, maybe might not get it. And I think, the difference is this movie had enough that I think the general culture was able to, like, at least wrap their brain around. Like, they knew Star Trek conventions existed, and what they see in this beginning scenes is, like, there's a bunch of weirdos in costumes, and they're acting weird. That's what I think Star Trek conventions are like. I guess that's accurate enough. Like, it worked enough. And then once they get on the ship, it is just so off to the races that, almost anybody is going to fall in love with the rest of it.
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying that, like, there are parodies before this that are at least about the fandom product, the thing, the film. Like, we have Spaceballs, like, almost 20 years before this.
Yeah.
Which is I would argue, more true parody than Galaxy Quest, because I think that what we get after Galaxy Quest is, like, films like Scary Movie and Not Another Teen Movie, things that are parodying genres but are narratively, like, the narrative doesn't really matter to the jokes. The jokes are kind of the whole point, whereas in Galaxy Quest, all the jokes, all the little things it's parodying, everything that's making fun of, are integral more or less to the story, right? The fact they're making fun of the super geeky kid, well, he's actually essential to the plot. They're making fun of the actors because they're essentials to the plot. The convention is actually important to the plot because it is the beginning and the end of the film. It is a sandwich.
They're
So I
not
feel
putting in like random scenes that are silly that are just recreations of some other movies.
right, which would
Iconic
be
scene.
Scary Movie, because I'm pretty sure the first Scary Movie opens with a parody of the opening scene of Scream, if I'm correct.
Right.
Which has a woman having her fake breast pulled out by a knife. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Marshall?
I was going to say, and all of those, things that came after Scary Movie, just like it became more and more like, do you recognize this reference we did? That's the joke. I mean, and this is not a, that's why I don't like to say that this is a parody, more of an homage, because it is telling a thing about a thing like Star Trek, and thus if you know Star Trek, you understand what it's doing, but you don't have to have ever seen an episode of Star Trek to understand this movie in and of itself. Like, you don't have to, like, the jokes explain themselves without you having to come in with outside knowledge.
I saw this before I had seen any episode of the original Star Trek series, at least. But the entire sequence on the planet where they're going to get the beryllium spheres, and you have these abandoned mines, and you have the jokes between miners, and you have those little childlike aliens, and the crewman number 6, who doesn't have a last name. He says,
"You have a last name, guy."
just wait. Name. They're gonna get terrible. There's gonna be a million of them, and it's like poking fun at the tropes of sci-fi. And then not long after, Jason's fighting the rock monster, and the same character says, like, "Look around. Can you recreate a lathe to fight it?" And all of those things, even not having seen at that point Star Trek episodes like Arena, I still got what it was going for. And it still made sense to me because just in the zeitgeist, as just a general fan of sci-fi, you get that reference to these tropes of sci-fi that come up. From that to the, like, why are you breathing the air without first checking to see if there's actually oxygen?
Is there air out there? You don't know.
Like, all of that is, I don't recall other things really doing that kind of directional or targeting those kinds of sci-fi tropes for the parody. And even since then, I don't know of many that have really done that effectively. Just in general of any kind of genre. Maybe mystery movies have done it somewhat, like Murder by Death, kind of poking fun at the mystery genre, but I don't see that being done as much with others.
I mean, you could say that, like, Airplane from 1980, which literally copies its plot beat for beat from Zero Hour from the 1950s to that they actually bought the rights for 0 Hour just so that they could copy it beat for beat.
Oh, wow.
But you don't have to have seen 0 Hour for the things in Airplane to make sense and be funny at the same time.
Yeah.
But also, they just throw in absurd non sequiturs all the time, which is part of the humor of that sort of movie. Whereas this one, it stays true within the world of the movie that we're creating. Like, there's nothing that, like, breaks the world building or just is a joke for the sake of the joke. And even the things like with the chompers, like, why are the chompers here? This makes no sense. It's because it was on the show. Why was it on the show? I don't know. But because this episode was badly written. But
yeah,
everything in that they deal with makes sense within the world that they've created and doesn't throw in something just for a joke or a parody or all that, which is why, as in terms of calling it parody, I think that that's an inaccurate thing to say for.
Yeah, it's not really parody. You're right, especially given what comes after this, which are much more explicitly parodies. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's obviously making fun of and it is a bit satirical of the things we're familiar with, but it is its own entity of on its own. It is not. It is like a self-contained thing that doesn't require the source material. It just benefits from awareness of that material. Yeah.
And it treats that material with some love.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed
100%.
to hostility or mocking in a mocking tone.
It's like the Orville. The Orville's very similar. It's obvious the Orville is like McFarlane's love letter to
Inspired
Star Trek.
by this.
And he loves Star Trek with a fiery passion. And yet it is very playful and fun and has some fun moments where it pokes fun at like tropes and things that are in Star Trek. But like that's good because Star Trek generally can't do that to itself without like that's kind of self-awareness is like not a thing that those worlds do typically.
Except Lower Decks.
Except Lower Decks, but it's a cartoon. So for some reason, cartoons can get away with it in a way live action.
Can get away with more. That's true.
allowed.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to the chompers, Marshall, while those chompers are happening, what's always bugged me about that sequence is they show a short clip of the actual episode with the chompers. And those things are moving. They're so much slower and so much like. So the Thermians like recreated everything else exactly, but the chompers, they're the
chompers definitely got,
let's make these even more
CGI
like...
upgrade that the original didn't. Which means also that the sequence that they are talking them through shouldn't work.
No. It reminded me very...
The other thing I love about that sequence is it's 1999, but he's like video calling his two friends who are watching the thing, and like one of them is giving him the sequence of the chomper so then he can relay it, and it's like, bless y'all, you could not do that in 1999 with video chatting.
And the time delay would have bad consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not least of what, like, how stable that connection is that they're getting this message, like, relayed through their computers with no delay, and then it's also finally getting to the Vox, and then transmitted through space, like, and they're able to time going through the squishy things perfectly the whole way through it. It's like,
it's such really? Fancy communicators. They make up for the differential.
Yeah, I guess. Somehow, who knows?
Just having it in Brandon's hand juices their internet to that.
Oh, there you go. It's its own mega Wi-Fi network.
Yeah.
Now we get it. This is why everybody was so obsessed with Faraday cages in the 2020s. Got to keep that 5G. Are you saying like the ship uses like 10G?
At least.
At least. Oh, we're probably up to 30 by then.
I mean, it's got to be enough to transmit from the ship to Earth in real time from wherever they are.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's so Rainbow Warrior points out in chat the Desert Monster was the end of Star Trek V with the money they needed to execute it, which I completely forgot, but yeah, I remember hearing about that independently of Galaxy Quest as well. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of fun little like behind the scenes bits and bobbles about the show, about this movie. I mean, there are things like how Enrico Colantoni got that voice, which, like, that's how he got the role, is he came to it and was just like, I'm going to be
just
bonkers.
did the voice.
And he took them from a vocal lesson he learned at some point, some vocal lesson, and just turned it into the way that they talked. And he basically got the role just based on that alone. They went, no, that's it. We want that. And it's like, yeah, he took a huge risk to make that work. Alan Rickman, not a fan of sci-fi. He just thought the script was hilarious and he wanted to be in it. So he was in it. He loves comedy, apparently. There's all kinds of fun things. The Gwen DeMarco line, for example, where she mentions that her TV guide interview is just 6 paragraphs that are about her boobs and how they fit into the suit. Well, that actually happened to Jerry Ryan of Star Trek Voyager.
Right.
Her TV guide interview was basically a bunch of paragraphs about her boobs and how they fit. And so, like, there's all these, like, fun little, like, bits and baubles about how this film got made, the references it makes, that I think it gets richer the more, like, you understand what it's referencing. It's a film that invites rewatch. It just really does.
Yeah.
I
It's
had
a
never
great
really
film.
looked into the history of the development of this film, but I did after the rewatch before doing this. And I was surprised, one, that they were really against Sigourney Weaver being in this at first, because she has a background. They didn't want anyone who had done sci-fi before. And she's like, people who have done sci-fi are the ones that get it, that know about these tropes and the humor in it. And so that made no sense to her, and I'm glad that she fought to get in this, because she's so great in it.
She's perfect. She's
perfect. And that originally Harold Ramis was supposed to direct it.
Yeah. And Alec Baldwin was cast in the role, but he turned it down. Yeah.
And he didn't want Tim Allen, so I'm glad, as much as I loved Harold Ramis, it
Ramis
would have been a very
left
different
the project
movie.
specifically after Allen was cast.
Yeah.
I want to say. So, yeah. I think there's this film, it's kind of amazing it got made, because there was, right now, like, we're looking at the stories about, like, what's happening with Blade or other big tentpole projects where, directors are dropping, and, like, this is what happened with Solo, like, people left. And it's worth saying, like, Harold Ramis in 1999 had a lot of Hollywood cash. Like, he had built up, a long history of making great comedy films. So to lose Ramis would have, not a small thing. And yet the film we got, it was worth every penny.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect. This is also Justin Long's debut cinematic appearance.
Yes. Yeah.
And
so, according to David
Mamet, it really is one of those roles. I mean, Justin Long there, like, you can, every once in a while you see a early performance of an actor where here is a star showing up for the first time, and that's definitely one of them right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's fun to watch. There's so many great little like acting bits. The guy who plays Quillick, like, he's hilarious. I always thought he was a father to me.
Right.
Yeah. There really is no bad casting choices here, which I think is, you can't really say about a lot of films. Everybody is well placed. Yeah, I mean, even, like, it's hard to imagine this film not having Tim Allen. There is a way that Tim Allen delivers this role in the comedy in it that, you could do Alec Baldwin, but Alec Baldwin's sense of comedy is very different than a Tim Allen sense. Right? There's something about the way Tim Allen delivers this performance that you, like, buy, that he's Jason Nesmith, this, like, has-been actor. And I don't know that you get that, like, can Alec Baldwin pull that? Like, it's Alec fucking Baldwin. Like, I mean, he hasn't accidentally killed somebody yet, so, like, what he's got going for him at this point, right? He's about to start 30 Rock, I think, at this point. Right, so he's like having a massive career. I can't imagine this. That's
still 10 years away. What would Alec Baldwin be doing in?
What is Alec Baldwin doing in 1999?
I mean, but he is a
thriller movies with Kim Basinger. Or
capital
was it before.
I mean, he is a capital M, capital S movie star in the 90s.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'm finding out right now. Don't you worry.
It would have been a very different movie.
Yeah.
With all those things. It might have still been good. It would have been completely different. It wouldn't have the perfection that this does. Because it's not just the writing, it's not just the great lines, it's the laugh after laugh that comes from just how well it's given by this cast.
And the
interplay between them
of the cast.
Exactly.
Which maybe somebody as big as a Baldwin might have disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you're kind of right. I mean, this is maybe not the best part of his career, but I mean, he's off of doing, a variety of big roles. He's in The Juror not terribly long before this, Ghosts of Mississippi, Mercury Rising, and then he goes on and he's in Pearl Harbor like a couple years after this. And also apparently in Thomas and the Magic Railroad as Mr. Conductor, which I don't remember, but okay.
Breakout role?
Yeah. I mean, he's got a huge film career. He's doing multiple films a year. So Yeah, you're right. It would change the dynamic of the film, whereas Tim Allen, I think at this point, is primarily a television actor.
Yeah.
Right?
Is
Like,
this
he's trying to be a
before
movie
He's
or
star.
done
after
some
the-
films.
This is when he had already done the Santa Claus, because that's 94, if I'm remembering correctly.
No. That's too early. Yeah, it is 94. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
But it's before he did like those motorcycle movies, The Hog.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's much later. But yeah,
Yeah.
he had been a successful at TV, successful at stand up, and had lead roles in movies, but he wasn't a movie star on the same sort of level. And so he sort
That's
of
fair.
fit in that perfect like yes, he's good, but you can believe that he's maybe a little washed up and a little full of himself, and wandering around his beautiful house in his underwear, drunk off his ass, and
Yeah. Well,
It also
I guess
worked.
you probably would worth pointing out that where Tim Allen is at this point in his career is kind of appropriate for Galaxy Quest, because even I think every film he did before this is a comedy. He is like in Michael Keaton territory, right? Where basically all he's known for is comedy. Galaxy Quest is obviously just another comedy. And so it's not like he's wanting us to believe that he's Batman. But you know what, Tim Allen? Go for it, buddy. Let's see what Tim Allen as Batman would look like.
Tim Allen works so much in this, though, too, because of Alan Rickman. And because of that dynamic between Jason and Alexander in the film.
Yeah.
Paralleling Tim Allen and Alan Rickman.
this is your problem, Jason. You never took craft seriously.
Yeah.
Tim Allen, said, like, I think Alan Rickman hated me when he first met me and didn't think I was a real actor, and had issues with how I behaved on set compared to others. And so they became friends and such, and Alan Rickman was great, but that dynamic, I think, of what kind of person and comedian and actor Tim Allen was compared to Alan Rickman fit perfectly with the characters. And it also fits perfectly in what made Star Trek such a success, was that dynamic between Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, of the pair of them, both as characters and the actors as well, and the stuff that went on behind the scenes in terms of the two of them playing off of each other. So if you had Alec Baldwin, it's that would have messed up that dynamic completely.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just not the same. It's one of those, I mean, I think I said it already. It's basically one of those films where it's really
Billy
hard to
Baldwin,
imagine
on the
any
other
of the
hand.
main cast
Billy
being
Baldwin.
replaced by anybody else.
Yeah.
It's perfect. You can't make this film better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, David Mamet apparently said that there are 4 perfect movies, and Galaxy Quest was one of them.
Really?
Yes, The Godfather, Galaxy Quest. I forget the other 2 offhand, but you can look them up.
I'm looking them up.
In his Bambi vs. Godzilla book about filmmaking, that was apparently one of the quotes by him.
Dodsworth, Godfather, A Place in the
That's it.
Sun, Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting quartet.
Very. I don't even know 2 of those movies. Like, and here is a Reddit
Well,
where people
2
are
of them
disagreeing.
are much older.
Here, I'm just gonna go on Reddit because this is great content and I don't care. Someone has said The Incredibles, a pretty darn good film. I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
The Thing, Shawshank Redemption. That person's
Which
a dude.
version?
I like Shawshank; it's very good, but it's a dude. Zootopia, which curious. My Cousin
That's
Vinny.
a choice.
Yeah. I did not like My Cousin Vinny. I didn't find it funny, but to each their own. Princess Bride, which I submit is one of the perfect films for sure. Maybe not 4. We can go with like 50, but still. Let's see. Gross Point Blank and
That is
Saving
really
Private
good.
Ryan, B movie, which I think is a joke, and then The Matrix.
Ugh.
To be clear, not David Mamet. This is the internet.
David
It's
Mamet.
Reddit.
Not the
It wasn't David Mamet on Reddit.
Probably. All right. Well, is there anything else that we should cover that you think we really need to get in here about this film? Animatronics, perhaps, Marshall?
I mean, it's Stan Winston creature effects, and you can't go wrong with that. But which then almost is like there's nothing else to say. It's Stan Winston. You can't go wrong with that. What else can you say?
I mean, they are good. I suppose that's all we could say. I mean, there really isn't a lot to say. They're just wonderful effects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they hold up, and I do love the look of all of the sort of the grunt aliens, because they look like little turtle men who went to the Army Navy store.
It's like this odd mix, between like Super Mario Brothers and Fifth Element.
Yeah.
In terms of
it's very good design.
It's very good design. I do love the bit, because Quellic gets shot by, the one soldier who's left on the ship for some reason, and then he has a problem with his gun long enough for Quellic to have a death scene, and Alexander to, give his hated line, but give it with meaning, and actually intend it, and then go back out there and tackle the guard who's still having problems with his gun.
He just stands in one place messing with the gun.
And it's just this is a very convenient problem you've had with your gun for 5 minutes in terms of the script.
I mean, he beats him to death with his bare hands, which is quite a feat. He gets mad. And for the first time, we get to hear him say that line with conviction, because everything else has either been his TV acting or the thing he does with absolute contempt in front of other people. And so for the first time, he says it in a context where it actually means something, right? It doesn't even matter to him at that moment, I think, that he is saying it. It's that this is what Quellic needs to hear. He is doing it in honor of Quellic in order to give Quellic comfort in this death, right? That's he says
finally
earlier,
finds
find
the
out what his motivation
for the line.
Yeah,
he finally finds the
motivation.
motivation for the line. Yeah.
That's brilliant. It's really well done. This film's great, guys. I don't know what to tell you. It has such
if you
great
haven't
moments.
seen this, no excuse.
David Mamet's right.
Yes, it is a perfect film. I mean, even Tony Shalhoub, who has admitted that he just was supposed to play the film high the whole time. I will note, there's a moment in the film somewhere that apparently involves. It's when Sam Rockwell is mentioning you look high. Are you high? Right. That's one of our clues, because he acts weird for most of this whole movie.
It's one of those things they never explicitly say he's high, but he is, and I think that's great that you just realize that.
I never realized that.
Dude, he has. Okay, hold on. How did you not know? The dude had in his mouth a bag
Snacks
of what I assume was popcorn that while they were rolling the beryllium sphere around, he brought snacks on, not just in the pod. He brought it on the mission. The only person that does that is someone who's high.
When
I just thought he was really chill.
Everyone else is just terrified beyond their capacity to move or speak for a while, and he pops in and is like, that was a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
What's wrong with them?
I
just thought that was his personality, that he was chill, and
he's the one who just jumps right in with what's going on, because he has his engineering there's a cut scene where he's working down in engineering, and all the other Thermians are like, sir, this is going wrong, and he just sort of Jedi mind tricks and be like, so what do you think the solution is? And they say that's right, you got it. And they think oh, he's such a wise mentor, but all he's doing is getting them to answer the question themselves.
It's very smart.
But then there's the bit where when he opens up they're having the big fight, with a couple of the aliens and then open the airlock so the alien fly out, and he's like, sorry, that's stuck there. I'll have some of my guys come with some WD-40.
Right.
He's just fully embraced being Tech Sergeant Chen in a way. Though there's like this quick one up because his character is Tech Sergeant Chen and his name is Fred Kwan. But at one point, and Tony Shalhoub, not Asian in this, but there is a throwaway line. He's like, Kwan's not even my last name.
Yeah. The bit for his character,
it's just a quick bit.
Yeah, it's a reference to like all of the ways in which like white people have basically played Asian characters in film,
right?
Despite not having any Asianness, and like he does it repeatedly. Like he just squints his eyes in order to give the impression that he might be Asian, but it's so blatantly obvious that obviously it's parody. You can imagine that like in the real world this is like grossly offensive, but we're making fun of this idea that this man has been playing an ambiguously Asian character on TV his whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when Tony Shalhoub first read for it and they liked him for the part, he said, do you want to maybe change the name? Because I'm not Asian. And they're like, no, that's the point.
Well, I mean, this goes back to, like, isn't, like, Ricardo Montalban's character, Khan, like, he is supposed to be Asian in the original Trek, if I'm correct, or Asian
right.
infused.
I mean,
you know.
The name of, Khan Noonien Singh is completely South Asian, and Ricardo Montalban is not. And
yeah,
but it was the 60s, and what are you gonna do?
Well, we can't do anything now. I mean, we just don't repeat those mistakes. Yeah, but you gotta rip them. Yeah.
But
back to your lover. Yeah.
Where is this in Sam Rockwell's career? Because I think this must be very early in Rockwell's career.
Yeah, because he had got big.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I still don't really know him. I know him as like the name, but I don't know him.
Though
maybe
the Charlie's
being
Angels
that guy
movies,
kind of thing. But
the Charlie's Angels movie was around the same time. I think that it was also
it's the
99,
next year,
and
it's 2000.
Okay, and
yeah.
And he was, the bad guy in that. And again, but like he did this here, he takes this part that is literally supposed to be this nothing part and makes it a complete scene stealer part.
Yeah.
Which
the same year he's in Green Mile. So I think based on what
he's
I'm
out there
looking at
working.
here, yeah, his career's moving up. Yeah.
But this feels like this was like a breakout role for him where he got to really get noticed.
It does seem like
or maybe
if
it's
this
just
isn't the
when
film,
I first noticed him.
it's at that moment where his career starts to shift, because just a couple years later he does Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which is a film I really enjoy. Then Matchstick Men, then he gets Hitchhiker's Guide, and then there's a bunch of other films, Frost and Nixon, and Iron Man 2 is in 2010. So, he's on an upward trajectory. He's also in a film called The F Word. Is that about the F-bomb? Or is that about federal? No, I don't care anymore. Never mind. It's about like the Federal Communication whatever thing, and I was like, that's less fun than the actual F Word.
They dubbed the F Word out of this with Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yes,
like back
deliberately.
When they changed from the R cut to
It was dubbed so bad you can't even physically say the word she supposedly says with the mouth movement she uses.
Yeah.
And it's on purpose. Yeah. Go ahead, Marshall. You want to talk? Go.
No, I just love that bit because it is so obvious. It's like, this is not what you filmed, but okay, you just dubbed it over. But fine. It's fine.
I guess they kind of like. I'm told that it's important, like it's intentional that they did this, but then it's like, okay, but what is the reference then? Is this just that all of these classic shows we think of, they could never have had a curse word at all, and that's the joke? But she's not a character in the universe of Galaxy Quest where they wouldn't have said these words. She is, a real DeMarco. She's this real person, quote unquote, who's like also not a real person, multiple layers. So maybe that's the joke, is we're getting the sanitized version, ironically, of a real person saying a different word than what they actually said.
I mean, I wonder how much of it is just that they thought that'd be a perfect reaction to that, and then somebody in, was like, let's try and keep this more on the PG side of PG-13 and take that out. Even though at that point she's half falling out of her uniform, though they
No, the movie was originally shot for R. So there was swearing throughout it, there were sex scenes, and the pot references were all overt references.
There still is a sex scene. What are you talking about?
Well, yes, but yeah.
The scene between Fred and Leilani.
Yeah, but Leilani.
Oh,
no,
that's not right.
Yeah, there were others as well, but when they decided to market it for children, they recut it for a PG or whatever, I'm assuming PG, rating, and so that's where that dub comes from.
There is a deleted scene that happens between. It should have happened between the chompers and actually getting to where the control system was, where they have to press the blue button, but nothing happens till the last second. Where they come across two more soldiers, and the technique that they decide to try and get past them is Gwen tries to seduce them, and they cut that scene out. But that's why she loses a significant more amount of uniform between those two scenes, because that's what happens between those two scenes and what they filmed, but they didn't refilm. Though I do love that they get there and they press the blue button. It's like, nothing's happening. Why isn't it stopping? Oh, because it just always stops at 1 second in the show.
It's evil like that. That always does. It's always that way. It's never 5 minutes. We stopped it early. Let's have tea. It's always in the last second.
Always 1 second.
Yeah. Once, I would love to have the opposite, where a film is oh, we got to get down there, and they're oh, that was kind of easy, and then they just stop and just have tea, or have a beer or something, and just yeah, it turns out this was not that big a deal.
There's something funny that I noticed also this watch through, that the actors seem to be simultaneously unfamiliar with the show that they did, which is not uncommon. Mm-hmm. Many actors are just look, I just get my script and to do it, and then it's out of my brain. But also incredibly familiar that with the point that they could be it's like you're acting just like you did in episode 17, and the other one's oh yes, episode 17, I remember that. So
but earlier. Yeah, go ahead. No, finish. Yeah.
I seriously doubt even the most hardcore I love this show and that I'm on, or the actor, if you would be able to go episode 17 and be oh yeah, that was this one where I did that. But they're able to do that while at the same time. That's actually a little bit that I get why they did it, but it doesn't quite ring true, because how many people actually refer to any show, the episodes, just by the episode number?
Maybe a hardcore fans, maybe.
I feel like that's one of those
production numbers are usually more complex too.
Yeah.
But most of the time they'll use an episode title rather than, and I get why they don't want to even get into that. But at the same time, it's sort of funny that it's that seems to be one of those things, you saw it on The Simpsons too, with the classic one with Lucy Lawless. In episode 7, you said this, but there's whenever you see something like that, a wizard did it. But it feels like that's one of those things that is a parody of geek culture, that actual geek culture doesn't really do that, because who remember?
It's not a normal geek culture expression. I mean, in a lot of ways, this film maybe doesn't quite get any of it accurate. If you go to a convention, a media convention, you're going to see lots of people in costume, because that's pretty common. But you're not going to have the level of obsession as the default that everyone has. Like, because every single person that goes up to them in the autograph line is like, in such and such episode of this season of the show, you and this character did this and this thing. I thought this was what would happen, as though the person sitting there would have that all like memorized. And it's like, well,
right.
If you're on the air for a few seasons, or you're on the air for many seasons, like, are you going to remember that level of granular detail? Even you filmed it, but I wouldn't. I don't. If you ask me right now, what was the, like, remember that episode you made that joke, in like episode 652, and I'd be like, I don't even remember what episode that is. It probably wasn't even labeled 652 at that point. It probably had a different number. I don't know what the number is.
In episode 47 of Torture Cinema, you said that movie was the worst movie you had ever seen. Yet in episode 43, you said, no.
Yeah. You said that was the worst movie you ever seen.
I mean, obviously, there are people that do it, and even Rainbow Warrior in chat is mentioning that he knows a Doctor Who fan who does know the classic series production code. But I would say that that's not the typical expression of fandom, especially today, where fandom is much more mainstream and more people are fans who just like watch and really like to watch or read the thing, but maybe aren't that level of, I don't want to say obsessed, dedicated, right? As like our teenagers who are like sitting at home making models and have like all the blueprints like in 3D designs that they can like walk through in a program they probably learned to program. And like one guy's got a stopwatch and like he's like a little 8-year-old that they've like got to know that like one section. That level is not your typical. And I think that's part of the joke, though, also is like, look at how silly fans are when they're this obsessed. But then also that gets reversed on us because it turns out, they're actually really important. Their
fans
obsession
save
and
the day.
dedication's important. They saved the day.
I mean, and that level of fandom did exist, even though, like, especially for Star Trek, even though, like, we're seeing a pre-internet version of this where you had to be, if you wanted that sort of information of like just having a full episode list of what you had to like really go out and search for it. You couldn't just like Google it because it's 1999. I don't know if we had Google in 1999 yet, or at least not.
Not good.
It's some
Google.
kind of search engine. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it was
like
Alta Vista.
You had to like really like go and buy like the Star Trek compendium and have the episode list. And like, I mean, and they had that sort of like deep level fan lore. I mean, I've got on
the
my
technical manuals.
On my shelf, I've got the technical manual from 1975 on my shelf that my uncle gave me. But it's, so that level of fandom certainly does exist, but yet it would be rare to have somebody have that information and go up to one of the actors and act like the actor is going to be on that same page and be able to answer a question that isn't in the technical manual.
Yeah.
Because it's real. Right? It's really a ship. It's
or even having the actor, right? Like, Nesmith, Tim Allen's character is like regaling stories of his time as captain on the NSEA Protector, right? And he's like talking to them with like vague reference to things. Like, you remember that, like how that one like Fangorian Whatchamabeast, like, remember that one? Ha ha ha. And they were like, oh yeah, I get that, ha. And sort of, to some degree, like, they're just trying to give us that perception of what fandom it can be like, where people are that dedicated and do know that, and even the people that are in that world feel that as well. But at the same time, it's also like, we have to recognize it isn't reflecting what we see.
And also, they've got to like sort of create the sense of that there is like 3 seasons worth of lore, when they didn't, like, nobody in the production team of this movie sat down and figured out the episode guide for for Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, but they didn't need it. There's no actual show.
Which we presume was, ended on a cliffhanger season finale and then got canceled, because that's the only way that Omega 13 thing makes sense. Because it's sense. They say it's a 2-part episode. They actually say at the beginning, it's like the first part of that 2-part episode, which implies that the second part exists. But yet,
they said that was never aired. They say something about one.
Well, they say something that's like, you're the first person to have seen this since it aired the original night.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, then you would know what the Omega 13 was because they activated it at the end of the cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Or
again, like,
did they?
Or did they? But at the same time, like, you can fan wank whatever that lore is. That, you know, the second that they did that as their season finale cliffhanger, which wasn't really a thing in '82, but okay. Well, wait a second. When was Who Shot JR? Was that '82? That might have been '82, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've got to wind up. We can be here for another half hour.
I could keep going for an hour and a half, I'm sure, but that's probably not the wisest thing to do.
Yeah, we have to slow down. So typically we grade these things.
Clearly, I love this movie.
We don't grade at the movies. I thought that was only torture.
We do. We grade at the movies. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And let's be real. None of us are giving it less than an A+, so we can just move on from this moment.
Yeah. Mammon is right.
If A+'s exist, then sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where I come from, you can't, like, you have an A, that's the highest you can be, so. Okay, whatever the highest is. Yeah.
This is Skiffy and Fanty University, so.
A++.
Well, okay.
A+, and then
that's
Enrico gets extra credit for the extra work he did.
Yes, he deserves an award.
Yeah.
A+. Okay. Well, folks, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. If you would like to let us know what you thought about this episode or any past episode, or you want to suggest a topic or what have you, go to skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions or send us an email at skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you like Galaxy Quest? There's someone in chat right now who I guarantee you likes Galaxy Quest, and I'm ordering them at this moment to write us an email. You can follow us, obviously, on all the social media places that we're present, except for the one that we're not present on. And we're at Skiffy and Fanty, typically everywhere you can find us. And if you want to find us and the newsletter and other links to our things, go to our link tree, linktr.ee/Skiffy and Fanty. You'll find all kinds of stuff there. Finally, if you like what we do, by Grepthar's Hammer, by the Sons of Warvan, please support us at patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty. Give us some love by leaving 5-star reviews and encourage others to check out the show and come to our live streams because it's awesome. Alphabet Streams on Twitch. Me, I'm at SeanDuke.net. I'm Alphabet Streams on Twitch. I presently record 7 p.m. Central on Tuesdays and Thursdays, doing all kinds of fun stuff. I have a Patreon. I have all that good stuff. I'm on the socials. I also have a link tree, which is just /SeanDuke.
And me, Daniel, you can find me at Reading 1000 Lives on Blue Sky, reading1000lives.com. That's 1000. And you can find my reviews, of course, on the Skiffy and Fanty blog. Hopefully you follow that.
You can find me just about anywhere by just Googling Marshall Ryan Maresca, because I am uniquely named within the world. My website is mrmaresca.com. You can find me on almost every social media as either Mr. Maresca or Marshall Maresca, depending on if Mr. Maresca was already taken when I got on there. You can also find me on my own podcast, which is World Building for Masochists. You can find that at worldbuildingformasochists.podbeam.com, where I and my amazing, brilliant co-hosts, Cass Morris and Tondi Barron, talk about world building in fantasy fiction to the painful degree. So that's me and my spiel.
Question. Have you guys done an episode on how nobody does reptiles right?
But we did recently do an episode on bugs with Premi Mohammed. So,
okay,
reptiles.
Well, I'm gonna have to... Let me fix all of your snake problems. I know the snakes.
I bet if I pitched, hey, can we do an episode on reptiles, Natanya would be like, yes, we must do this episode.
Natanya would have some fun references because she does Arthuriana stuff, and there's got to be all kinds of weird snake stuff in there.
Absolutely.
Reptile crustaceans.
Rep stations. Once again.
Rep stations. Yeah. Well, thank you, Marshall, for coming on the show for this episode. It was great to have you again.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
Perfect. All right, folks. I have to make it awkward, as is required by the Skiffy and Fanty bylaws, and I will let you all know that at present we are all aboard the NSEA Unprotector, which is the new ship out now from Space Force by the United States government. You did not know it, but you were transported in the middle of the show, and in just a handful of moments, we are going to be heading off a mission to protect crustacean. Crawdad reptilian nations, whatever they're called, crustacean reptiles. We have to protect them as they are being moved from one planet to another. That is what's happening, guys.
May the microbes be with you.
That's not right. Oh, that's a good line. All right, and on that note, awkward ending. That's